Believe it or not, there was a time when Firefox was the king of the internet. Yeah, before Chrome even existed, millions of people swore by it. It was fast, customizable, and honestly, it felt like the future of browsing. But here's the crazy part. Today, Firefox barely clings to a few percent of the market. From ruling the web to becoming almost irrelevant. What the heck happened? Here's the wild part. Back in 2009, Firefox actually held over 30% of the global browser market. That's 1 out of every 3 people online using Firefox. It wasn't just popular, it was the cool kid of the internet. Extensions like Adblock Plus, themes that let you style your browser however you wanted, and features that made Internet Explorer look ancient. But fast forward to today, and Firefox is barely hanging on with just around 2.26% of the market. From ruling the web to becoming almost irrelevant. So what happened? How did a browser that once defined the internet get pushed to the sidelines? And why does its decline actually matter for the future of the web we all use every single day? That's exactly what we're breaking down in this video. And trust me, the story is more dramatic than you might think.
All right, let's rewind back to the early 2000s. The internet was exploding. People were getting broadband, YouTube was just starting out, and social media was still in its awkward teenage years. But the browser everyone was stuck with? Internet Explorer. And let's be honest, it was terrible. It was slow, constantly freezing, and riddled with security issues. People hated it, but there weren't many options. That's when Firefox entered the scene in 2004, and it was like a breath of fresh air. Suddenly, browsing the internet didn't feel like a chore anymore. It felt exciting again. Firefox was fast, it was reliable, and here's the big one. It was customizable in ways Internet Explorer couldn't even dream of. You could install extensions that blocked ads, changed how websites looked, or added brand new features to your browsing experience. Extensions like Adblock Plus became must-haves. And then there were themes. Remember personas? You could literally make your browser look however you wanted, whether that was sleek black, bright neon, or even plastered with your favorite band's logo. By around 2009, Firefox had skyrocketed to over 30% of the global browser market share. Think about that for a second. 1 out of every 3 people online was using Firefox. It was the browser for people who wanted freedom and control over their internet experience. If you were a tech geek or just someone tired of Internet Explorer constantly crashing, Firefox was your safe haven. And because it was open source, people trusted it. They felt like it was built by the community for the community, not some corporate giant trying to control the web. For a lot of people, Firefox wasn't just a browser, it was a movement. It's hard to overstate this, but back then, Firefox really was the hero of the web. It gave power back to the users, and it forced Microsoft, yes, the Microsoft, to finally start improving Internet Explorer. Firefox was proof that an underdog could stand up to a giant and actually win.
Just when Firefox was sitting comfortably as the people's champion, a new challenger quietly stepped onto the scene. It was 2008, and Google, yes, the Google you used every day to search for cat videos and homework answers, decided it wanted to build its own browser. They called it Chrome. At first, people didn't take it too seriously. I mean, Firefox was still climbing, Internet Explorer was still massive, and who really needed another browser? But the second you tried Chrome, it was obvious. This was different. Chrome was fast, stupid fast. While Firefox was struggling with memory leaks and clunky load times, Chrome launched pages in a snap. Its minimalist design felt futuristic. No clutter, no toolbars eating up half your screen, just the web front and center. It was sleek, simple and refreshing. And here's the genius move. Google already controlled the things you needed every day: search, Gmail, YouTube, Maps. So they tied Chrome directly into that ecosystem. Your bookmarks, your history, your logins, everything synced. Suddenly, Chrome wasn't just a browser, it was your personal portal to the Google universe. Oh, and remember advertising? Google plastered Chrome ads everywhere. If you opened YouTube back in 2009, you probably saw banners and pop-ups telling you to get Google Chrome. They weren't just competing, they were using their dominance in search and video to shove Chrome into the spotlight of billions of eyeballs. Developers noticed too. Because Chrome was based on WebKit and later Blink, it handled websites modern better and faster. Web developers started optimizing sites for Chrome first because that's where the users were going. Meanwhile, Firefox started to feel dated. So while Firefox was still trying to iron out performance issues, Chrome was sprinting ahead, backed by Google's money, marketing, and ecosystem. In just a few short years, the tables turned completely. By 2012, Chrome overtook Firefox in market share. And that was the beginning of the end of Firefox's dominance. In all seriousness, Chrome's rise wasn't the only reason Firefox fell. Google was tough competition, sure, but Firefox also managed to shoot itself in the foot more than once. First, there were the performance issues. Firefox had this reputation for being a memory hog. You'd open a few tabs and suddenly your laptop fan was blasting like a jet engine. For a browser that built its name on speed, that was a big problem. Then came 2017 and the Quantum update. This was supposed to be Firefox's big comeback, a complete overhaul to make it faster and leaner. Believe it or not, Quantum killed support for thousands of legacy extensions. Overnight, people's favorite add-ons just stopped working. Imagine relying on an extension for work or school, and suddenly it's gone with no replacement. For power users, the very people who had kept Firefox alive, it felt like betrayal. And then there was mobile. While Apple had Safari locked on iPhones and Google had Chrome pre-installed on Android, Firefox never found its footing. The mobile version was clunky, slow, and offered nothing compelling enough to convince people to ditch the defaults. At that time, mobile browsing was exploding, and Firefox basically missed the wave. But the biggest irony? Firefox's lifeline was the very company eating its lunch, Google. For years, the majority of Mozilla's revenue came from Google paying to be Firefox's default search engine. At one point, over 80% of Mozilla's funding was tied directly to Google. So while Firefox tried to compete, it was also financially dependent on its rival. Talk about a conflict of interest. Each of these missteps chipped away at Firefox's identity. What started as the cool independent alternative started to look slower, less reliable, and less essential. And as Chrome gained momentum, Firefox struggled to answer the question, why should anyone still use it?
As Chrome rocketed ahead, Mozilla tried to carve out a new identity for Firefox. If it couldn't win on speed or popularity anymore, maybe it could win on values. So Firefox leaned hard into being the privacy-first browser. It introduced features like enhanced tracking protection, tools to block third-party cookies, and constant messaging about protecting users from big tech surveillance. On paper, this was smart. After all, people were starting to get nervous about how much data companies like Google and Facebook were collecting. But here's the problem. Most people didn't actually act on those concerns. Surveys showed that while users said they cared about privacy, when push came to shove, convenience almost always won. If Chrome logged you into Gmail automatically, if Safari synced seamlessly with your iPhone, that was enough to keep people from switching. And even in the privacy niche, Firefox wasn't alone. Browsers like Brave came along and made privacy their entire brand. Brave blocked ads and trackers by default, and even dangled rewards in cryptocurrency. DuckDuckGo also joined the fight with its private search engine and mobile browser. Suddenly, Firefox's privacy-first identity felt less unique. Meanwhile, Google kept playing its own game. Even while collecting oceans of user data, Chrome continued to be the default for billions of devices. The average person simply wasn't willing to give that up, even if they knew Firefox might be better for their privacy. So instead of standing out as a clear alternative, Firefox ended up in this weird middle ground. Not the fastest, not the most convenient, and not even the most radical when it came to privacy. It was trying to be the ethical choice, but most people just clicked accept all cookies and moved on.
Now, if Firefox's struggles against Chrome and Safari weren't enough, things behind the scenes at Mozilla weren't exactly helping either. For one, there was constant leadership turmoil. CEOs came and went in quick succession, and the company faced a series of high-profile controversies. One of the most infamous was in 2014, when Mozilla's newly appointed CEO, Brendan Eich, resigned after just 11 days following backlash over his political donations. Whether you agreed or disagreed with the outrage, the event rocked the company and exposed deep fractures in its leadership culture. Then came the layoffs. In 2020, Mozilla cut about 250 employees, a quarter of its workforce. And these weren't just random cuts. Entire teams working on experimental projects like Servo, a next-gen browser engine, were dismantled. Every time Mozilla lost talent, it lost some of its ability to innovate and compete. And that leads to another problem: distraction. Instead of doubling down on its flagship browser, Mozilla chased side projects that never really took off. Remember Firefox OS? It was supposed to be an open-source mobile operating system to rival Android and iOS. Sounds great, but it flopped almost immediately. Then there were VR browsers, new messaging apps, even a VPN service. Ambitious, sure. But while Mozilla was busy trying to reinvent itself in a dozen directions, Chrome was laser-focused on owning the browser market. Even the money Mozilla did have often came from those same Google search deals. That financial dependence meant they never had the resources to go head-to-head with Google in a serious way. And every failed experiment just drained more energy and attention away from Firefox itself. In short, while the outside competition was fierce, the inside of Mozilla was messy. Leadership issues, layoffs, and side projects created an environment where Firefox could never fully catch its breath. It wasn't just outpaced, it was distracted. So where does Firefox stand today? Well, it's not dead, but it's definitely not the giant it once was. Back in 2009, remember, Firefox commanded over 30% of the browser market. Today, it hovers around 3% worldwide. That's not just a decline, that's almost a free fall. Chrome dominates with almost 70%. Safari has locked down Apple's ecosystem, and even Microsoft Edge, once considered a joke, has overtaken Firefox in usage. Firefox has become more of a niche browser than a mainstream one. Its user base today is mostly made up of open source enthusiasts, privacy advocates, and people who consciously want to avoid Google or Apple's ecosystems. In other words, the die-hard loyalists. But outside of that group, most people don't even think of Firefox as an option anymore. That's not to say it's irrelevant. Firefox still has some standout features. Tracking protection that actually works out of the box, container tabs that let you separate your online identities, work, shopping, social media, and because it's not tied to a trillion-dollar corporation, it still carries that independent, open-source spirit. But let's be honest, features alone don't change the reality of today's internet. Chrome is the default on most Android phones. Safari is the default on every iPhone and Mac. Edge ships with Windows. Firefox, you have to go out of your way to download it. And in the age of convenience, very few people bother. So while Firefox is still here, still fighting, still innovating in its own corner, it's no longer a major player in shaping the web. It's more like a passionate underdog, respected by its fans, but ignored by the mainstream. A browser that once led the charge, now just clinging to survival. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Firefox lost, Chrome won, who really cares? But here's why this story actually matters. It's about the future of the internet itself. See, browsers aren't just windows to the web. They're gatekeepers. They decide what standards get adopted, what technologies websites can use, and even how secure your online life really is. And right now, the gatekeepers are almost entirely controlled by just a few tech giants. Think about it. Chrome runs on Google's engine, Blink. Microsoft Edge, same engine. Opera, same engine. That means Google effectively controls over 70% of the browser market. Safari, powered by Apple, adds another chunk of dominance. Together, Google and Apple decide how the modern web works. Firefox was one of the last big browsers not controlled by big tech. Its engine, Gecko, was independent. That diversity mattered because it kept the web from becoming a monopoly playground. When you only have one or two engines calling the shots, innovation slows down and users get fewer choices. There's also the issue of power concentration. With Chrome in the lead, Google isn't just influencing how the web is built, it's also harvesting data at a scale no other company can match. More Chrome users means more integration with Google Search, Gmail, YouTube, Maps, and more data feeding into Google's massive ad empire. And the fewer alternatives people use, the easier it becomes for these giants to shape the internet to fit their business interests, not necessarily the users. For example, Google can push advertising-friendly standards. Apple can lock Safari deeper into iOS to protect its walled garden. Without competitors like Firefox pushing back, who's left to fight for an open, user-first web? So when Firefox declines, it's not just about losing an old favorite. It's about losing balance in the ecosystem. It's about an internet where innovation, privacy, and user control are slowly squeezed out in favor of convenience and corporate profit. That's the bigger tragedy here. Firefox fading isn't just the story of one browser, it's the story of how the open web itself is shrinking.
So what's the takeaway here? Firefox started as the underdog that gave power back to the users, challenged the giants, and helped shape the modern web. But through a mix of tough competition, strategic missteps, and internal struggles, it's no longer the giant it once was. And this isn't just nostalgia for geeks, it's a reminder of how fragile the open web can be. When one or two companies dominate the browser market, innovation slows down, privacy takes a back seat, and the choices we thought we had start to feel like illusions. But here's the silver lining. Firefox is still alive. It's still fighting for privacy, independence, and open source principles. It's just asking one thing of us, to not forget it exists. Because every time we switch to a browser out of convenience, we're letting a little more control slip into the hands of a few tech giants. So, here's a question for you. The next time you open your browser, which one will it be? The familiar default or the one that fought for your freedom online? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. And hey, if you learned something new today or want to support independent voices online, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep exploring the stories behind the tech we all use every day. Firefox may have fallen from the throne, but the fight for the open web isn't over, and it might just need you to help it keep going.